All right, it's 8 o'clock, so we might as well go ahead and call the meeting to order. Just a couple things on the agenda today, but some really good information to be shared by the schools, and I'm sure there will be a little question and answer period at the end there. They have a presentation for us, but we will kick things off with some updates from Representative Mueller.
Hi guys, and July 1 is when the new law started, and so we now have okay. So there's been I did hear on the radio that the department's going to start sending out some rebate checks in September. So if you are if you qualify as an individual, you can get $260 as a single person. As a married person, I think it's $520. And so those should be coming out, I think, in the fall. Of course, we have all of our other stuff that's going to be happening that unfortunately takes more money from you and gives it back to you. Paid family leave has not been implemented yet, but I know that they're getting things started with hiring people up at the department, creating that new payroll tax and all of those things. So that's what's coming in 25, I believe, 2025. And then our increase in license and tabs and registration for cars, that's all now in effect. And then of course we have some of the other aids that are just coming out as well. Since we have our schools here, which is exciting, we have a lot of changes for our schools, where there is now universal free breakfast and lunch, with some other things that happen with that. We also, and I talked to Melinda about this, or Linda, I can't remember, about this, that in the operating budget, they actually have now $2 extra per student to provide free menstrual products to everyone starting from the 4th grade on up, and those I believe have to be in the back. So that should be interesting, so we don't have to do donations for that. I know that the school will work really diligently in making sure that it's in a place that makes sense, so that we're not having junior high boys everywhere with these menstrual products, because they're required to be in both sets. And so we do have of course, I had a big conversation with Apex and Chief McKeegan about the marijuana bill that is going to come to effect August 1. There is a gap between when you're allowed to use it and when you're allowed to get a license. And then I believe there's another gap between when enforcement actually has the tools to get that type of thing. Apex was really concerned, and so we just went ahead and oh sorry, APAC, my fault. APAC was pretty concerned, and so we just went and talked through it with them. You know, goal is still the same. We don't want anyone underage using alcohol, drugs, smoking at all, period. This just because it's legalized doesn't mean the law has changed. So those are things we were able to kind of walk through. I do have a 1-pager for people who are interested that kind of goes to some facts, and there was a follow-up question about vaping, and so I'm getting some information from a researcher about that. Of course, I sent it to her right after 4th of July, so I'm pretty sure if she was normal, she'd be on vacation. So, and then we are seeing there's just some implementation that's happening, some discussion, especially as we look at the carbon neutral bill that's going to happen by 2040. That's a lot of questions. Other than that, I'm just going around and talking to all the people, and went to Johnsburg this past Sunday and almost got the poop for the loot stuff, which is pretty exciting. I was in the right row, the wrong square, to be honest.
Did you also participate in the fireman's fight, the water fight?
Oh gosh. So we were in Rose Creek, and they did their water fight, and it was 60 degrees and like sprinkling, and I'm like, really, water fight with the series and raining. So it started drizzle or like raining more consistently. And I was like, listen, Dan, if you want to sit out here and watch it, fine, but I'm gonna go back in the car because I'm pretty sure they're almost done and it's raining pretty consistently. And all of a sudden, here comes one of the firefighters. We're doing an exhibition round. You guys, you have to do it. And so I can say no to my husband, but I can't say no to a constituent. So they dragged me out there and I put on the fireman suits and everything, which by the way, that thing is uber heavy. I hope you guys get a chance to try that. It was, but I didn't get wet. Dan did because the people who we had with this like dropped the hose and like this, and Mr. Dan was in the line of fire. So I mean, sometimes I'm sorry, but it was great. And but as I said, if you guys ever need anything, I will be on vacation at the end of July, but
will you be appreciation cookout?
I am there. I actually, I have mail appointments all day and I come back just for that. And then head to Grand Meadow for school board and then head up to the city so I can go to St. Cloud the next day. So, but I will be there then. Thank you for all that you guys do. And if there's anything, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for the update. Any questions before we move on? All right. Now we will turn things over to Joey in schools and some updates and some, I think we're talking graduation rates and things of that nature. So
yeah, so I had a message from Elaine to come this morning to talk around our APS graduation rate. So thanks for the opportunity. I brought horsepower in the room here with Corey and Katie here that also are going to provide some more information with this. And I think one of the things we want to talk about today is obviously the four-year graduation rate is an essential benchmark in schools that we use in the state of Minnesota, but also to talk around getting a longer range picture of graduation rates. So we also have a 5, 6, and 7-year graduation rate that we want to talk about too. That is really important in schools as well. It provides a better comprehensive view of the overall needs of the district and the students and how they complete their high school education, which is the ultimate goal with that. So we're going to talk about those things this morning and share some of our data and also some of the things that we're working on to address it. So first of all, we work with our district operational plan. That is really kind of our district's learning framework for what we're working through, whether and it kind of really cascades through the organization. If we're learning about initiatives, if we're readying the system for change and then we implement change, how we're managing that, and then really what we want to get to is standard work. Like this, all of our new things that we do becomes a standard practice in our district. Some of that stuff takes a short amount of time, and some of it can take years. But we use our district operational plans really, how does the system learn? And that is an important part of our strategic plan. You've seen this before, but it's important to highlight. This is our strategic roadmap. We implemented this last year. So we look at our mission, our vision, our core values are really our guide of our actions and our words. And these core values are really important in our organization. So not only for the students, but for our staff as well. So as we work through improving the school district, these are really our guides and our drivers for our actions and our words. And then we have our 4 priorities listed here. And we're going to talk about these today, and you'll see examples of them throughout the presentation and really how they align to what we're here to talk about this morning on graduation dates.
So I'll jump in next. I'm Katie Batkin. I'm the Executive Director of Academics and Administrative Services. I've been with Boston Public Schools for quite a long time. I had the pleasure of working with Patty when she was a teacher. But one of the things that I feel like at this point that we're moving differently in this strategic planning process is really listening to our families and listening to our stakeholders, their families, our students, and our staff and what they want. Their desired daily experience. They want a day at Austin High School, at elementary schools, at the middle schools to look like. And so part of our strategic planning process was really, and I know parents were like, man, we're getting surveyed a ton. Yes, you are, because we want to know what you think and we want to know what you feel, and we also want to know what you want from an experience in Austin Public Schools. And so we sought out quite a bit of feedback, and that is really the driver in how we do the work and the work that we're going to do. So as Dr. Page talked about, our priorities are really, really narrow because they need to be. We have a tendency to want to be everything to everyone all the time, and we really had to narrow our focus in and say, this is what our families and staff and our students are saying they need from us, and that's how we need to be responsive, and that both in short and long-term goals. So that work is really coming in those core priorities of being a safe and welcoming learning environment through our Packer profile that is really driving a lot of our instructional work. As well as our offerings, and then also how we engage with our community. I know some of you in this room have been a part of some of our work in working through the design of the Packer profile and what that looks like for our students and how they're going through their experiences at Austin Public Schools, whether it's within the community or within the classroom. And then also our third priority is that MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of supports, and that's how we make sure that we get all students what they need when they need it. And that's been a big endeavor for us. We have really had to go back to a drawing board per se. We've engaged with CARI, the Center for Applied Research and Educational Improvement through the University of Minnesota, to really do a really intensive audit of our system and help us understand where we're standing up and where we're falling down, and where we need to do better. And so that's really the driver of that third strategic priority. And then our fourth one is obviously being a financial, being fiscally responsible and making sure that we're utilizing our finances in a way that is not only meeting our students' needs, but also staying within the parameters in which have been set for us through the legislature as well as our community. So our desired daily experience is really driving how we do the work and the work that we're doing. And we're really taking I know that's very small, but the words there are from our staff, our students, and our families to really keep us accountable to what it is that we're doing and how we're going to go about supporting their needs each time. So this is just an example of one of our priorities. So our Packer profile, we really are going about that with 3 different layers in terms of career pathway exploration, meaningful learning experiences, and then the Packer portfolio. So we're really taking a look at our students' experiences within their learning and saying, okay, what kind of career pathway exploration needs to be present within each element of our system? So whether that's in a math classroom, whether that's in 3rd grade in reading at Southgate Elementary. How do we help students really prepare to be life ready, life and career ready? And for some students that may include college, and for others that may include going right into your workplaces and being prepared for supporting what the needs you are providing for our community. So really looking at exploring those career pathways and how do the courses and pathways that we have set for students need to change to evolve to best support what the career opportunities are for our kids here in this community and beyond. In terms of, yeah.
I don't want to.
No, please.
So do you reach out to companies? Can you talk about career paths? Talk about staff, kids, and parents. You reach out to the businesses and talk to them and get feedback.
Yeah. So this last year, we actually we've engaged quite a large group. We had about 50 different entities, both nonprofit, for-profit, within our community come together and really kind of help us design the Packer profile. Starting from what skills do you want to see from students as they enter your workplace? We know that you are obviously teaching them some of that content, but what skills do you want kids to have? What kind of experiences do you want our students to have before they get to you? And then what kind of partnering can we do to maybe provide some of those experiences while kids are here in Austin Public Schools, whether it be you coming into our system or us giving you students and teachers. We know the learning has to take place in two realms, right? Our kids need to understand what the career opportunities are for them within our community, but so do the teachers. And so we need to do some work. Many of our teachers are fantastic they also haven't been within the work system in the community or beyond for quite some time. So we are going to be doing some partnering. You'll be hearing from us. We've hired a Packer profile coordinator, Emily Hudlin. She also runs our County CEO program. So she'll be reaching out to many people to really connect, not just with our staff, but with our students through different experiences, through different mentorship opportunities, and really helping students to develop those skills that you are looking for in your businesses. So that's part of that meaningful learning work. Yeah, exactly. And we also understand that we have standards to meet, we have content that we need to deliver, but we also need to do that in an engaging way that helps students see beyond a textbook sitting in front of them and how that can be applicable to a career. And oftentimes we need to rely on business partners to help us make some of those connections. And then the last piece of that is the Packer portfolio. And so all of our students will not only leave Austin Public Schools with a diploma, but they will leave with a portfolio demonstrating the skills and the core values that our staff, our students, and our families have said that they want from our students when they leave Austin Public Schools. So they want them to be communicators, they want them to be resilient, they want them to be responsible, they want them to be learners, and so on. And so our students will leave with a portfolio full of examples of how they have met those core values, so that when they show up to a college interview or an interview in a business, they have a representation of all of the things that they have done in their time in terms of meaningful learning experiences and career pathways to show from their time at Austin Public Schools. So all of these components are in development. Our first class that will be going through the Packer profile will be starting with us next year, which is really exciting. And so they'll be learning and what the Packer profile looks like next year is not what it's going to look like in 10 years. It's going to continue to evolve and change as our students evolve and change, and the needs and interests of our students continue to evolve and change. We know as a system, we can't continue to just offer courses that we like, but we need to offer courses that make sense for our students as well as our business partners. So we have a lot of work to do, but it's exciting work. It's exciting to for our students to play a part in that educational design of what they want their experiences to look like, as well as our staff to really think outside of the box and in a non-traditional way of saying, how can we support our students in learning content, but also really being prepared to be life ready. So that's just one of the examples of one priority. That's an example of that priority number 2. We go that granular in each of the other priorities as well. But I won't bore you with that. We'll get into why we're really here. And you have some interest in graduation rate as well as just understanding our system. And we thought it was really important for you to have a good context to really help you understand and to ask us questions too, and how we can better serve our students.
Another question.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the career pathways, and just to sort of follow on Mark's question, but when we look at Riverland, I mean, you for as an example, I know you're working with Minnesota on the health tech here in assessment, but
Sure.
do you also get input from Riverland and
Yeah.
leadership?
Yeah, we had a number of people from Riverland that have been a part of this design. Jean Kyle's been there, Miguel, Oscar was there. We had a number of people that have been a part of this because while our MTSs, we've partnered with the University of Minnesota to audit our system. We also know that our students will be partners with multiple systems as they leave Austin Public Schools. So whether that be Riverland, which we have a fantastic partnership and opportunity for all of our students with the Hormel Assurance Scholarship. But we also know our students in Cato, they go to, Winona. So we really need to make sure that we broaden those pathways and opportunities for our kids to get what they need. Yeah.
Okay, so as Katie had mentioned, our instruction, our practices are ever changing and evolving. Wanted to give you a little bit of context about who our student population is, because I do think that there is a little bit of a misunderstanding throughout our community that we're a unique positioned rural district in terms of our demographics. And so I wanted to just take a moment and give you a full snapshot of who our student population is, and then we'll dive into the complexities of graduation rates. Because the graduation rate calculations aren't as easy as one would like to hope that graduation rates are calculated upon. So just to give you a snapshot of who we are as a district, when we talk about student diversity, the percentage of our students that are students of color in our district is almost at that 57%. In 2018, that was the year that we became a minority majority district, where we pressed to that 50% threshold. And so we're a very diverse community within the schools, which is much greater than that what we see even in our community when we talk about our Austin proper percent in that regard. And so when we talk about a changing diversity demographic, our percent of students of color significantly changing over time. When I came to the district in 1997, that number was at 8% when I came to Austin Public Schools in 97. So in that amount of time, we've seen this, I mean, significantly change in that regard. And when we compare Austin Public Schools with that nearly 57% to the rest of the state is running at 37.7% students of color throughout the entire state. So we're almost a 20% increase over the statewide picture when we're comparing analytics to test performance and other things. When we talk about our free and reduced lunch population, so our socioeconomic status, our percentage of free and reduced lunch students this year is at 67.1% compared to statewide at 43%. So again, we're over almost a 24% differential between that and the rest of the state in terms of our socioeconomic students receiving that free and reduced lunch. And I'll show you what the qualification procedures are for that in just a moment. The next number on here is 19.2%. That's the percentage of students that receive special education services. This is a number that we are more in alignment with the rest of the state. The rest of the state runs at about 17.6. So we're under a 2% difference there. And really the difference in that is that we're one of the larger districts in our county. And we're able to offer some additional services and supports that other smaller schools can't for some student populations. So that's why we see a little bit of increase there. And then this one is one that I find as a great asset to us as a district, but also creates some challenges, is that 38%, basically 38% of our students speak a primary language other than English in the home. Now, that doesn't mean that all of those students, nearly 40%, don't speak English. A lot of these students are dual language students. About 21% of our students require English language services. So that means we have a large percentage of students that are dual language students, which I wish I had that asset in my toolkit. So and when we talk about our percentage of primary languages statewide, it runs at about 19.2%. So almost a 19% difference there when we talk about language diversity in our district. When you look at enrollment trends, just wanted to share this with you a little bit also. Like I mentioned before, I came in 97 in the early 2000s. So this is over a 20-year picture here, but we were in a declining state. It wasn't that the opening of Woodson created this spike in enrollment, but it didn't hurt anything because we were one of the first districts in our region to offer all-day kindergarten. And so that was a draw for some families to have that all-day K experience. But you can see since 2005, we've been on a continual upward trend all the way up until 1920 and the spring of 20 that can call the pandemic hit. And COVID did have an impact on our enrollment situation. And so some of that was families choosing to stay at home, do homeschooling, some families choosing to do online options. And we even had approximately 27 students in kindergarten that we expected that decided to hold out a year. They're just going to wait because they wanted to see, get past the pandemics theoretically. But we've kind of leveled out here a little bit at this point, and we're not expecting that number to go up significantly in the next couple of years as we're progressing forward. Now, oftentimes when we look at these numbers, this includes our early childhood. So if we included our pre-K and our early childhood special education populations, we're a district of about 5,200 students, if you put it all together. So we are a district over 5,000, which puts us statewide in kind of that medium, small type size district. Here's that ethnicity trend that I talked about. You can see the linear fashion of that. If I go extended this back to 97, we'd be at that 8% that I spoke of earlier, but you can see we've gone up about 2% per year, pretty much very linearly over the years. So we continue to see that rise as time goes on. And when we look at each one of our individual buildings, Sumner Elementary is our most diverse building at 87% students of color. Just run down the list. I won't read all these to you, but you know, even statewide, 37.7% is, so every one of our buildings in the district exceeds that. And you'll notice an anomaly down here, our CLC pre-kindergarten program, which was at CLC Queens Angels Church for a few days last fall, had no students in it, therefore it ended up not counting. Those kids got moved into other school sites, so. We talked about that 57%, the majority of our students, 43% are white. After that, we have almost 30% Hispanic. And then our next largest population is our Asian population, which 5 years ago was not the case. Our African populations, our Black African-American populations were largest after Hispanic. But our Asian populations have been booming very rapidly in district. When we compare that to the rest of the state, this is all the students in the state of Minnesota. 62% are white, only 10% are Hispanic up here. And then our Black population exceeds our Asian population. So again, we have a much larger concentration of Hispanic and Asian families in our Austin public schools. And again, we're running almost a 20% differential. And then when we look at what the Census Bureau says about Austin, Austin, the most recent census information puts us at almost 37% as a community. So when we talk about the Austin versus the rest of the school district or 18 and under population, we're actually at exactly a 20% difference. So while we realize the differential and the changes in our net diversity in our community, our 18 and under population is still 20% greater than that what we're seeing in our community. So as these students age up and they stay around and work and live in our communities, we'll continue to see our Austin proper percentage continue to rise. Getting in that socioeconomic standpoint, these are just again Census Bureau facts from the latest census. When we talk about socioeconomics, the median household income for Austin is at $54,000. The statewide median household income is at $77,000. So we're at a $23,000 differential when we talk about the economic status of our students. This is our economic trend over the last 20 plus years. We compare how our students have qualified for free and reduced lunch. So only about a third back in the early 2000s. That had risen up to the year 2013-14, we kind of hit our peak at that point, 57%, and then we plateaued out. And then the pandemic hit. And again, during that, the federal government said we're doing the free lunch program for all students. We had a lot of families not participate in that free and reduced lunch qualification process. Due to that, the district also lost a significant amount of funding, over $1 million, in 1.3, just compensatory funds in that 1 year. Was lost because of those forms not being completed. And then as the lunch was put back into a pay process, you can see the families responded and completed their forms. And we're at that 67% this year. Now we don't know what that's going to look like going into the future with the new legislative changes in terms of free lunch and breakfast again going into next year. So we don't know what our actual percentage would be and what the process is actually going to be in terms of some of those.
And where does that funding come from? For supporting free lunch?
Well,
So, yeah, normally if they fall into a different, like, I think it's 180% of poverty, then they can apply for the free and reduced lunch. Legislature passed that it's now mandatory. We use the word free, but let's be honest, nothing's free. This is taxpayer supported thing, which is if I'm going to choose where to put my money, I want to feed kids. So that the schools, from what I understand, and it sounds convoluted to me, that the schools have to apply for a national program, and whatever the national program doesn't cover, the state then covers.
So it comes from the feds.
And from the state.
Majority comes from.
Well, I don't know if it's the majority. There's some schools that don't get a whole lot of funding. I was gonna say it's quite a bit of money.
Do people still need to fill out those forms so that you can know the legislation?
This is the unintended consequence that I tried to explain a lot of at the legislature. The Minnesota State High School League uses these forms, and so, and of course, compensatory funding uses these forms. Just like what we saw, the federal government provided the free lunches. Schools lost over $1 million.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, and that is a good point. I mean, our forms are called, actually, they're called educational benefits forms. But most people affectionately call them the free and reduced lunch forms, because that's the primary focus for them to do that. But there is additional advantages for them to complete that fund because they get reduced rates on other things. For participating in your schools.
Okay, thanks.
In terms of qualification, we talked about our median household income in Boston being about 54,000. If I'm a family of four, 51,000 is that cut point last year. That's actually, this was 22, 23. So those numbers have, due to inflation, they continue to rise each year. So this year, I believe it's actually pretty close to that $54,000 range for family of four, which means that level there. When we talk about each one of our schools in the district, every one of our schools, again, exceeds the statewide percentage of free and reduced lunch kids. And so we have that higher socioeconomic diversity in the district. When we talk about those primary languages within the district, almost 2/3 of our kids speak English as their primary language. Another almost 20% speak Spanish. And then there's 45 other languages represented in that 18%. So officially this last year, we had 47 languages spoken in the school district. Our highest has been a few years back for the pandemic, we were at 52 languages. This is the highest we've ever been. We talk about what those languages are, obviously English being our largest spoken language, then Spanish. So those two are not represented on there, but the other 45 languages are. Our Karenni and Karen populations have leapfrogged. They were very small even 5-6 years ago, and now they are our third and fourth highest predominant language spoken in the district. And some of the statistics around that are pretty impressive. The 192 Karenni students that we have, statewide, there's only 622 Karenni speaking students in the state. So 30.8% of all the Karenni students attend Austin Public Schools. So only 11 districts even house Karenni students statewide from the Burma and Thailand regions. So again, we're a draw for communities. I mean, we're a welcoming community, which we pride ourselves on, but we have a very high concentration of our Karenni population. Our Karen population at 181, that puts us, there's 60 districts, so there's more students there, but we're ranked 6 out of 60 districts with our Karen populations for our Asian populations. Our fastest growing one here is the Pompeian group with 94 students here. Out of the entire state of Minnesota, there's 104 Pompeian students, 94 of them go here. So we have 90%.
What region is that?
They're from Micronesia.
From Micronesia.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So again, there's only 6 districts that report Pompeian students, and we have 90% Pompeian students here. And we have a very high concentration of that. Our Anuak, our African speaking language there, which is next, we have 82 of the 432, so almost 20% of the Anuak students attend Austin Public Schools in the state. And then our French speaking students, we're ranked 6 out of 103 districts that have French speaking students. So again, we have a very rich language diverse school district in our community. And again, essentially all of our schools have greater language diversity than the rest of the state. Bottom one there is our Austin Online Academy, which is just slightly below the statewide percent. And then this table is pretty impressive to me. There's 553 districts and charters that report to the state of Minnesota last year. And when I rank order them, now this list would be very long if I tried to put the whole list on there. So 533 lines or 53 lines on there. But I wanted to highlight just a few. I rank ordered these. So statewide, there's 346 different languages spoken throughout the entire state. So we don't rank the state because they're the statewide. But the big dog in the state, Anoka Hennepin, has 172 different languages in their monster district. They're the most language diverse. But some key points here. Pull out Rochester, 17,000 plus students. They have 86 languages spoken. They're ranked 10th. Mankato Public Schools, again, in outstate, the Big 9, they have 60 languages spoken. They're ranked 23rd. St. Cloud, another outstate school, they have 54 languages they're ranked 26th. And then Austin Public Schools has 47, and we're ranked 31st in the state. All the rest of these, for the most part, are metro districts as you go down that list. So as far as outstate districts, we are truly one of the most language diverse districts, especially our size, because even St. Cloud is close to 9,000 students. So, and then like I mentioned before, just because of increasing diversity does not mean that all these students can't speak English. The second bar on here represents the percentage of students that require English language services. So you can see that that has tripled over the last 20 years. We're at about 20%, 21% of our students require English language services. So again, those are students that are native speakers and are at least learning the languages. Almost all of our buildings, again, see that of the statewide percentage. exception of our ALC and our Austin Online Academy. That question.
That may be, this may be hard to answer, but as you compare Austin to the other outstate districts, is there any one district that stands out where we have a very similar profile or similar,
Yeah,
maybe it's Mankato or?
Wilmer is one of our benchmarks against that because they have similar industries, similar size, similar demographics. And our special education summary, again, this is one where we're pretty more balanced. The top line is our early childhood special education program. To get into that, you have to be special education, so therefore 100%. But again, similarly, our special education population is pretty close to that of the state, other than we are slightly higher. So let's talk about graduation rates, which is why we're here today, but I want to give you a firm foundation of where student population is. Graduation rates are not as simple as one would think. Most people would like to say, well, if you have 100 seniors and 90 of them graduate, you've got a 90% graduation rate. It doesn't use that kind of a simple calculation. It uses the NGA, the National Governors Association calculation, which is a cohort survival calculation. And so what happens is, as soon as kids enter ninth grade, so the very first day that they are reported as a ninth grade student, they have exactly 4 years from the date of that time to graduate from high school. It doesn't matter if it's with Austin Public Schools or with any other school in the state. So schools inherit theoretical students from other school districts, as students are mobile and move around all the time. And once they move into your district, if they're there for 6 months, you've inherited their status wherever they started in that ninth grade year. So it doesn't matter if they were 2 years behind when they come to you, they have now dinged your grad rate in your district. And so, I mean, we can serve them out the other way too. So we advantage or disadvantage districts as far as that cohort goes. But they have that ninth grade timer that starts ticking the moment they start ninth grade. And if they're not graduated within that 4-year time frame, then we lose them. And so some of the nuances of this is that when we have students that go in and out of state, we lose track of that timer, but the timer is still running. So if they come back to us from another location, it's after that timer is expired, they're no longer going to count on 4-year graduation rate because they're going to be now in the 5th year rate. So that's when we talk about a 5th year and a 6th year and a 7th year. And now theoretically, there could become an 8th year graduation rate because the state legislation has just changed. We were required to service students up to the age of 21, but now this year it's now moved to 22 for students in IEPs with legislation. So there is way more than what's publicized about graduation rates. When we talk about the 4-year rate is the one that hits the media. The rest of those are the ones that we are obligated to support and require these services for students in IEPs, continuing on past those years. So that's the cohort survival method. And again, if a student can start in any district in the state of Minnesota, that timer starts. And if they move in or move out, you're still responsible for those students, whether they graduate here or not. So it's an interesting calculation. So this has got 3 lines on it, showing our trends over time. There's 3 lines. The blue line is the state of Minnesota. So you can see the trends statewide. Statewide, it's been 82% for the longest time, just cresting over at 83%. So they've gone up just over a realized percent over, about a 7-year span, 8-year span. Austin Public Schools is in the red. And so you can see our percent has been increasing over time. The last 2-year classes did go down just slightly. And then we hit that 71% last year, which is one, it was one of our lower cohorts. Again, but you have to also take into consideration what happened to the class of 2022 and what was going on in the world during that time with the pandemic. When we talk about the 4 classifications of students who graduate on time, students who drop out, students who are continuing, and students who are unknown are what we have in our graduation cohorts. The dropout rate increased pretty significantly in that class of 2022. And I should say most of that, but a number of those were due to economic situations where those students left to enter the workforce to support their families during the pandemic. And then the third one on here, just for representation, is that our Austin High School is the gray line. And you'll be questioning, well, we have one high school. Why is there a differential between our gray line and our red line? Because our district is high school. We actually have 3 secondary schools currently. Prior to 21, we only had the 2. But we have our Austin Area Learning Center, again, which has a graduation rate, which is lower to typically students that are at risk in that program. And then we have our new school, which is our Austin Online Academy in the last couple of years. So that's where the differential comes in between the Austin High School and the other. So you can see the differential. The state went up 0.3%, and we went down 7% as a district.
Quite math. Historically, if you pick like the year 2000, where were graduation rates back in the day?
Well, actually, when you go back, some of the graduation they don't longitudinally, we can't go back that far. I mean, because the NGA calculation was to do exactly. Yeah, those things change over time. Can't, let's see exactly where the NGA came in.
You know, with the 2022 students
Yep.
bringing into the workforce, was there a rise in GED completion then?
That's a question I do not.
I don't
know the
think we've
answer
had that.
Oh,
data
okay,
yet.
okay.
In my opinion.
Too soon, yeah.
So just to give you a little bit of indication of where some of our gaps lie in our graduation rates, there is a difference between males and females graduation rates. You see the male is in the orangish line, the district percentage is in the red, and then the green is our females. So this last year in the class of 2022, there was a gap of 14% between our males and our females. Females graduated at a higher rate than our males. When we talk about our students of color versus our white students have a higher graduation rate than our students of color. You can see that gap runs at about 17.6% this last year for the class of 2022. This one's a lot more busy because this breaks down some of those different ethnic groups, which you can see are Hispanic, Asian, Black, and white populations and the different color representations there. And the one that we did lose some of our biggest ground on was our Hispanic population, which is also a number of those students are in that group that I was speaking about that left for the workforce to support families. But they dropped pretty significantly from the 75% rate down to a 56% rate, which impacted our students of color percentage there. Our EL population.
I mean, just to look back, I mean, that had been trending
Yes,
upwards,
yep,
right?
yep. Yeah, that had been a concerted effort in the district. We've been working on increasing our Hispanic graduation rates last few years and continuing to work on that and all races as far as that's concerned, but that was a targeted intervention for us was high school Hispanic graduation rates. So it had been going up. But again, the pandemic is impacting this. And our EL students versus our non-EL students, again, our gap there is at 25%. And then the last one here, or actually there's two more, special education gap. So students with IEPs versus students without IEPs, is individual education plans, 15% gap there with the class of 2022. So again, those are students with disabilities that are in that orange line there for special education. And then the socioeconomic impact. You'll notice that the green line is the students that are not free and reduced lunch kids, and then the ones that qualify for free and reduced lunch are the orange kids, and there's 23% gap there. That one is the gap that's been the most consistent over time. You can see that 23% has been persistent year over year, regardless of whether or not we've gone up or down as a district. So that's certainly having an impact. And so when you compare each one of those gaps, our EL population had the biggest gap this last year for the class of 2022 at 25%, free reduced lunch, white students versus non-whites at 17, and then special ed, and then our gender gap at 15%. So when we talk about our four-year graduation rate, where were some of our biggest losses from the year prior? You can see that overall we went down 7%. Our Asian population went down 13%. Blacks did lose a little bit of ground on a 2.3% decrease there, but that Hispanic one, as we looked at earlier, dropped almost 20%. And our white population went down a couple percent, and then our EL population also. Again, some of these students, you can have a Hispanic male that is special education and English learner that qualifies in all the category areas. So here is that four different breakdowns of their ending statuses is what we call in the district. But what ends up happening last year for the class of 2022, when we look at all the students that are on that four-year timer, there's 377 total students. 271 of them graduated before that timer expired. So they finished their graduation and received their diploma. 43 of them were continuing on, meaning they needed additional credits, so they continued on into the following summer or year to complete those credits and graduate, which they become part of a 5th year and 6th year and 7th year plan. Some of those 43 are also students with IEPs that require additional services beyond their high school 18-year age component. But the biggest one that you'll see there that's changed is your 46, that big red block there. It actually goes back to some of our pre-pandemic years where we had some more dropouts in 17 and 18. But we had seen our dropout numbers decreasing in the last few years, but this class had again a 46 student count that dropped out. And some of those, some are completely, we don't know why they dropped out, they just said they're done. Others, it was for financial reasons. And then the 17 are unknowns. Those are kids that literally don't know where they went. If they went to another Minnesota school, they wouldn't be unknown because we would have picked them up there. But they're just gone. So that's, again, that counts against that percentage. And so when we compare us to the rest of the Big 9 schools, so we've got the Big 9 district comparison, Faribault is at 61% students of color. You can see Austin at 56.9. We've already talked about that. The rest of the school districts and statewide, a number of the schools in the Big 9 have less diverse student populations than the rest of the state. So when we do a Big 9 comparison, but we're always comparing them because we compete with them in sports, you know, we are towards the bottom when it comes to graduation rates. But when we look at our diversity, we're closer to Faribault than we are in any other districts. When we talk about our EL percentages, again, Faribault and us are over 20%. The rest of the districts have a much smaller percentage of EL population. Special education is pretty balanced across the Big 9 in the state. As we talked about before, it's just a couple percentage points difference between most of the schools. And then our socioeconomic, that free reduced lunch status in Faribault has the highest percentage of free reduced lunch, we're second to that. And then when we take a look at our graduation rates, Northfield, our least diverse district in the Big 9, has the highest graduation at 90%, down through the statewide at 83%. Austin, second, Faribault. So that is our 4-year rates. Now, when we talk about 5, 6, and 7-year rates, we won't go into the same detail. I like numbers. Hopefully you're not wanting me to get out the door now. But, what's interesting, we start to look at our 5-year rate. When we talk about state of Minnesota, you can see they're up just 1% over their 4-year rates because they're running 84 to 85 now, 86%. But our Austin High School at a proper school is basically running at the same levels as the state. As a district, again, we're slightly below that when we include our ALC programming. But we've rebounded now. We're not down at 71%. At our 5th-year rate, we're at 81.5%. When we go into a 6th-year rate, we look at our 6th-year rate, now we're at 85%. And the rest of the state is at that 87.9%. So we're closing that gap when we talk about our 6-year rate. And then the last one is our 7-year rate. And on this one, we're all in that mid to upper 80s%. So when we talk about Austin Public Schools and the requirements that we have legislatively to support students through the age of 21, it's important that we realize that there is a 5th, 6th, and 7th year rate, which never gets publicized in communities and media. So, any questions on that? Because I did go through those things fast, but we only had 4 hours. I think we did pretty good. Yeah.
I don't know if you, look at this, but for those that are in that 5th, 6th, 7th year, where do we, I assume Faribault, Austin might be sort of up there in terms of the percentage against the total population in that.
Yeah,
5, 6,
yeah,
7.
it does mirror what we see in the.
Yeah, I would also say to that question, if you do, Corey hasn't given you enough numbers and graphs here. If you do go to the Minnesota Department of Education, there is under tab data, it's called Minnesota Report Card. And if you go there, you can ask a whole bunch of other questions of your district, and they built it out now where you can actually do comparisons. So you can look at, you know, what's the 5-year rate in Faribault, that's awesome, or 6 or 7 year, and really pick any district or school around the state. It's nice to have public access to continue to.
So
Yeah.
not an easy solution, but now that we know the data, right, which they always know. What's the answer?
So, as we started here, you'll see what our strategic plan looks like and around our priorities. So really being really tight and specific around how we're supporting students, whether that's student factor profile or through multi-tiered systems of support that look at academic behavior and social emotional pieces. We think it's important that we look at the 5, 6, and 7 year rate. Not that 4 is not essential, but as you can see, as we build context around who are our students, there are some challenges and barriers that our students have. Doesn't mean they can't be successful, but it does say that it means that some of our students need some more time to do that. Our work around our strategic plan and really being specific as far as how we're supporting students throughout the system, early childhood all the way through, even to our A classes or attaining GED or graduation is all part of, our portfolio, so to speak, of how we're supporting our students.
When I'm at the legislature, I talk all the time about how amazing Austin is because we are so unique. Because of, I represent a rural district with a Fortune 500 company in it and a population of over 50% of non-white students. Like that's incredible. And so the things that Austin is doing, we are often pioneers in the state in what we do, which is pretty impressive, which is one of the reasons why I'm so dogged of making sure that the money goes to our kids. That the money goes to our kids, because these guys here are making sure that they're supporting our students because they see them every day and we look nothing like anyone else in the state.
Yeah, and I think we still want to, we're accountable to that. We're serious about district-wide and school improvement. And so whether that's through targeted interventions, adopting curriculum that is going to be supportive of the learners that we have in front of us are all part of it. So it's really multifaceted, but we're still accountable to that. And we're serious about improvement. So as we continue to work on our implementation of our strategic plan, we have a request here, for participation from this group or in the community. We have lots of ways to get involved. Whether it was Katie talking about our factor profile work groups, but also, our facilities, our finance committees that really, help us plan our resources to attain our vision for our kids is to prepare them to make a difference. So there's lots of ways that we're looking to participate outside of, the traditional, what people think of, whether they're helping fundraising, that's all important. But we also need people around the table that, help us look at our resources or plan our facilities or contribute with our world's best workforce committee that is, comprehensive in approach to curriculum, staff development.
And one of the things I talked about our MTSS audit. That's not the only audit we've done. Obviously, we have areas for improvement as well, right? So we also engaged in a math instructional audit throughout our entire system, as well as the gifted and talented services audit, right? So we're not only looking at areas in which we're struggling, but also areas in which we excel. We excel at gifted and talented, but how else can we improve? Right, and how can we serve more students and serve students with the needs that they're showing us each and every day? So we recognize that we have areas to improve as well, and are continuing to dive deeper into those to see what it is we need to do.
Right. I mean, obviously you have huge challenges and, I appreciate you pointing those out as, and I want to acknowledge that obviously we're very unique.
And we can't just stay on a course because we know, right? We have to we have to go where our kids need us to go. And so that's part of our work, is really making sure that we're limber in that way and saying, okay, well, this is what we're doing, so how are we going to go here?
Right. And I guess me as a business owner, and seeing people move in and out and why they're moving in and out and what's happening. You hear a lot of times, especially with corporate that moves in and out with Hormel, they want to move, they see the high school numbers or the graduation numbers, and they're like, we just, education is really important for our children, so we're choosing to go X, Y, Z, right? And so for us to grow as a community, I mean, that is a huge concern, right? And so we all have to work together to somehow try and bridge that gap.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've done differently over the last couple of years is we've always had a good relationship with
Yes,
people, and
yeah.
because I know we've been really purposeful, like a presentation like this. to
Yes.
Their leadership team, that they, not only have they seen the bar graph in the paper,
Right,
but they also understand context.
Yeah.
Of what's happening and where we're going, what we're
right, right.
building towards. So
Mhm.
that's been, I think, very helpful. In, continuing to build strong partnership and
Right.
provide resources, whether that's time and ideas.
Right.
The district.
For non-traditional students, those who, might have to drop out because they need to go into the workforce, is there a night program available for them to continue with high school? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming back. I mean, the pandemic was devastating. To that program, from us trying to find and locate teachers
Yeah.
for it, but it's rebounding.
Oh, good.
It's coming back, but if you look at the complete, I would say package or resources that we have from birth all the way through, that age of 22 is we really offer comprehensive services for our families. Whether that's the student that's graduating on time or needs more. That's our role as a district to do. I think some of the things that we're really working on early is with the early intervention, just to make sure that we're getting our childhood screenings done in a timely manner. We have a lot of families, kids that don't get those screenings until a few days or right after kindergarten start, and they have some significant needs. And those are services that could have been provided for years prior to them entering kindergarten. And so the race to catch up for that is, we do that, but that's something we're working really hard to catch kids early to provide the resources that we can as a school district. Much earlier for a lot of our families.
And is there monies for that? Like, let's just say we did a huge push and, that grew by 50%, that gap. Is there fundings? Like, is that
And
something
with that, like along with that 5, 6, and 7 year students, the funding the same for 5, 6, and 7 as it is this 4-year.
does the district get monies to service those?
Yes, I mean, through our high school piece, but then that will continue to diminish over time. So that's the part of this is
More of
why
the
you come back to
incentive
the
for the 4-year,
Right.
traditionally.
Yeah, because, and this gets back to why the four-year graduation mark is essential, right? Because they're working through high school for that. So it's really precarious with that.
How does the Austin online program fit into all of this? I mean, do you see kids transitioning into online if they're like a 5th year?
Yeah, I don't know if we have any,
Or-
I mean, it's new, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna be starting our
Yeah.
3rd year. But then, we're working on retaining kids, so it's early to see. I know one of the things that we're seeing greater success rate than we did in our first year of the online program as far as credit attainment and completion. And I think that's been tremendously improved. One of the things that's different now with legislation is all school districts are really online schools and have to provide that. So competition.
But I just wonder, because I mean, if you think about a student who maybe, maybe they see they're not successful, in person, and then so they say, okay, well, my fallback is online, and they try the online program, and then that's, in some ways, to me, it's almost like that can present a lot of challenges that they don't expect, just because maybe they're not held to sort of the same regimen as if they were in person. So then they fall out of that, and then it's just like they fall off the chart entirely. So
Yeah, I know they've really tightened up their our processes for that. It's like if I didn't want to be in high school and then jump over to online and you're still not showing up, is right, remove them. It's like you're back in person. And so that's one of the course correction that we made in year 2. And that's been helpful with that. So
That's one of the benefits of having it within our own system is that we know our students, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if they're not going to a different online institution, they're with us.
Any other questions? Look at that, got it all in. Thank you very much for the information. That was very informative. I think it helps when you bring information like this to us, because I think most of us go out and push it out. You know, we talk to other people about it too. So I think that we appreciate it. And this is a
We find
good
it
group
very
to.
helpful too, is we want to share information, but we also want people to be ambassadors of the district.
Yep.
You know, so
Yep.
there's, there's really important questions to answer, and there's accountability, but there's also more to it.
Absolutely, yeah.
With that, and it's not an excuse, but it's, if we're gonna talk about, graduation, we have to talk about the whole thing. Not just what ends up on a bar graph in the newspaper.
And Corey, the numbers were us. It demonstrates things so well. I mean, it really honestly does. So, appreciate that.
The ambassador point that Dr. Page just said, I mean, it's important for us as community members and leaders in our community to make sure that we get that messaging out, because so often they look at the grade school's grade value and it's a singular metric based on assessments.
Mhm.
And they,
Yeah.
and our statewide, our kids in high schools don't do well on those numbers, but it's,
Well, and I think, back to our staff too, and their dedication, care for kids. I mean, I was a superintendent in the district that had a 97, 100% graduation rate and 100% proficiency in MCA, and our teachers work just as hard and
Yeah.
cares just as much about kids, and the community cares just as much about the school as that other school district. But it's the nuances, it's differences, the community, and that's, I think, the exciting part of.
And those of us who work in the community and own businesses or otherwise understand that too, because we struggle with some of it in our own businesses.
I also think it's some of the best assets for our kids.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
so grateful that my girl gets to be in a system and learn from other students that aren't like them. And it's good.
Does the state or, do you get more monies for a non-English speaking or non-primary English speaking, or is it
There's some aid that comes.
other than IEP stuff, other than
Yeah,
special?
I mean,
ed
there's
stuff?
the general formula, and then there's all the different categorical aid that
Okay.
goes with it, so.
Yeah.
And you'll see that, a base funding of X dollars, and then if there's students that qualify, in ESL, GT, there's.
Okay.
We call them fully loaded,
Sure.
and so there's a lot of categorical aid.
All right. We've taken up a couple extra minutes, but thank you everyone for coming. Thank you. Everybody have a great day. Thank you. And I'm sure if we have additional questions, we can reach out.
Take care, Mark.
Good to see you. Oh, yeah.
Thanks for bringing the technology.